Hey guys, tonight we're plunging headfirst into a world so decadent, so perfumed, and so unwashed that even your local gym's locker room would seem like a sterile paradise by comparison. Yes, we're heading to Versailles, land of silk, powder, and some of the grossest beauty routines ever invented by the human mind. If you've ever looked at your own bathroom shelf, seen 12 half-empty skincare bottles, and wondered if you're overdoing it, just wait until you hear what French royalty did in the name of beauty. Before we spiral into a scented cloud of pomade and questionable hygiene, go ahead and like the video, subscribe, and maybe drop a comment with your own most absurd beauty ritual. But only if you actually enjoy what I do here, no pressure, I promise. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is. Someone out there is definitely moisturizing at 2 a.m. with a face mask made from despair. Now, dim those lights, turn on a fan for that soft white noise, get comfortable, and, if you want the true Versailles experience, maybe douse yourself in your most aggressive cologne. Let's pause for a second. Have you ever wondered what it actually felt like to live in a palace where everyone looked perfect, but smelled like a cheese platter left in the sun? Did they really bathe in milk? Why was everyone so obsessed with moles? Could you survive a day in silk stockings, lead makeup, and a wig large enough to conceal a raccoon? Did anyone at Versailles actually know what a toothbrush was? Or did they just hope nobody got too close? How long could you survive surrounded by 100 nobles, all sharing one bathroom, if you can even call it that? And now, congratulations. You've just woken up at Versailles in 1775. Your face is sticky, your wig is itchy, and the air is so thick with perfume that you might actually taste it. Welcome to the disgusting beauty secrets of French royalty. You're about to learn more about historical hygiene than your therapist would recommend. You reach for your towering powdered wig, the centerpiece of any royal ensemble. It's made from real horsehair, glued together with animal fat, and dusted with flour so thick it could double as an emergency cake ingredient. Underneath, your scalp itches with the fury of 1,000 lice, tiny guests enjoying the buffet. But what's a little crawling when your hair says I have more money than the Louvre? Let's talk about wigs. Not the modern ones you grab at Halloween or see on reality shows, but a monumental, gravity-defying architectural marvel that has its own ecosystem. You don't simply wear a wig at Versailles, you haul it, like a feathered, perfumed pet perched on your skull. And the bigger, the better. Nobility is a competitive sport, and if your wig isn't tall enough to block someone's view of the king, are you even trying? Placing the wig on your head is a ritual. First, a servant powders your natural hair, which is cropped close, partly because it's easier to keep under control, and partly because it's already half fallen out from all the lye soap and creative infections. Then comes the wig cap, a tight linen stocking to protect your scalp. In reality, it's a sauna for lice. Next, with a two-handed heave, your valet lowers the wig onto your head, like a particularly itchy hatbox. Some are so heavy that just wearing one for a day is equivalent to a neck workout. Royal posture isn't a sign of confidence. It's because if you tilt too far, the entire wig might topple off like a frosted wedding cake in a strong breeze. Let's address the elephant, or the louse, in the room. Wigs in the 18th century are basically amusement parks for lice. The average nobleman has resigned himself to the constant presence of wig powder beetles and hair vermin. Because at Versailles, the only thing crawling faster than the courtiers are the insects living rent-free in your coiffure. But don't worry. You have options. You could try to delouse your wig with a fine-toothed comb and an afternoon in the sun. But it's considered much easier to just send it out to the wig maker, who will boil it, bake it, or blast it with vinegar, depending on their mood and how much you tipped last time. The smell is distinctive. Between the animal fat used as glue, the flour powder, and whatever herbal pomade you've chosen to mask it all, your wig radiates a bouquet best described as stale bakery meets petting zoo. Perfume helps, but only up to a point. After an hour of dancing at court, The entire room smells like a mixture of sugar cookies and faint panic. You wonder if anyone notices, but nobody at Versailles would dare comment. Everyone's suffering together. Solidarity through shared itching. Of course, wigs aren't just a fashion statement, they're also social armor. A well-powdered, elaborately styled wig can hide any number of secrets. Bald spots, mysterious rashes, or the occasional healing sore from last month's mercury treatment. For those who can't afford the best wig makers, the cheaper options use goat hair or old rope fibers. This is the equivalent of showing up to a Ferrari convention on a used tricycle. Everyone notices, nobody says anything, but you can feel the judgment radiating through the powder haze. If you're truly fashionable, you'll accessorize your wig. Maybe a miniature ship, some silk flowers, or a family of decorative birds. You become a walking centerpiece. If you're unlucky, you might become a nesting site. There are more than a few stories about noble women who found tiny mice taking up residence in their towering coiffures, or who fainted mid-ball and revealed a menagerie of stowaways to the entire court. And let's not forget maintenance. Your valet spends hours repowdering, brushing, and repairing the wig each week, muttering prayers for deliverance, and occasionally for a raise. On washing day, the wig is removed, soaked in lye or vinegar, and left to air dry. Hopefully not in range of the palace dogs, who have been known to mistake wigs for chew toys. By day's end, your head feels like it's hosting a particularly fidgety garden party. But as you look in the mirror, towering above your rivals, you know one thing for certain. You may be itchy, you may be crawling, but at Versailles, nothing says power quite like suffering for fashion. And besides, if anyone else seems a little too comfortable, you can always accidentally knock your wig their way and share the joy. Because in the world of French royalty, status is measured in inches. And in the secret, wriggling life that comes with them. Today's beauty routine starts with a thick slathering of Venetian ceruse, white lead paste. It smooths over pox scars, tells the world you don't work in the sun, and, as a bonus, slowly poisons you. By lunchtime, it's peeling off like cake frosting in the sun. But at least your enemies can't see your pores or your declining health. Let's set the scene. You wake up in your chilly, candlelit palace room, draw the curtains, and catch your reflection. Last night's mask of white has mostly migrated onto your pillowcase, leaving an abstract painting of lost youth. But there's no time to worry about laundry, because nothing says aristocrat quite like a deathly pale complexion and a pillowcase you could probably sell to a toxicologist. Your first step is to call for your maid, who arrives with a small trowel, a fresh jar of ceruse, and the sympathetic look of someone who's seen too many noble faces dissolve over breakfast. You hold still as she spreads a cold, heavy layer of the lead-based concoction across your cheeks, forehead, and nose, smoothing it over every imperfection. It's like plastering a wall. Only the wall is your face, and the renovation is permanent. The mixture itself is a cocktail of white lead and vinegar, a combination so corrosive that, by the time you reach 30, your skin is less youthful marble and more early Roman ruin. You may be wondering why anyone would do this. Simple. The court's definition of flawless is as pale as a winter ghost. Sun? Kissed? That's for peasants. Healthy glow? Try delicate pallor. Ideally one shade away from haven't seen the sun since the Edict of Nantes. Every nobleman and woman is desperate to look untouchable, unblemished, and unbothered by the outdoors or hard labor. The more your face resembles a porcelain doll, the higher your status. But the cracks, literal and figurative, begin to show quickly. By mid-morning, your face feels stiff, almost numb, like a poorly glazed statue. Every smile, frown, or flash of courtly disdain is a gamble. Ceruse doesn't flex, it cracks. If you're unlucky, a stray laugh might leave you looking like a marionette with stress fractures. Courtiers practice the art of polite expression. Just enough to look alive, not so much that your face crumbles into a fine white dust. If you have to sneeze, it's best to excuse yourself, as one good sneeze could launch a snowstorm of lead flakes across the breakfast table. Let's talk about the side effects. Beyond the flaking, Symptomatic slowly seeps into your skin, causing breakouts, hair loss, and, with long enough use, a beautiful selection of open sores. The solution? More Symptomatic, naturally. It's a self-perpetuating nightmare. The more your face decays, the thicker the mask you apply, until you've basically shellacked yourself into a walking health hazard. By age 40, you might have the flawless complexion of a corpse, and the teeth to match, since lead poisoning is famously tough on the gums. At court, this look is universal. Men, women, even children dabbled in the deadly beauty paste. Each morning, the air in the royal chambers fills with the scent of vinegar and the quiet despair of people whose faces are dissolving faster than their fortunes. If you're lucky, you can cover the worst pockmarks with a strategically placed velvet patch, a beauty spot that whispers, "I'm mysterious, but also, I may be contagious." At least you're not alone. Versailles is a whole palace of ghosts, gliding through clouds of powder, silently comparing whose cheek has flaked off the most by noon. Maintenance is key. Servants trail you with brushes and silk cloths, dusting your shoulders and reapplying powder to catch the latest crumble. Some days, if you lean in too close to gossip, you might accidentally leave a perfect imprint of your chin on your friend's sleeve. A powdered calling card that says, "I was here, and so was my declining bone density." By the time the candles are snuffed and you finally scrub your face with rose water, the damage is done. Your skin is raw, your pores are gasping, and somewhere, a medieval apothecary is counting his profits. But for a few hours you looked like royalty, flawless, unapproachable, and, ironically, a little less alive with every day. Modern skincare might involve serums and sunscreen, but in Versailles, beauty was measured in layers, layers of paste, powder, denial, and the faint hope that you'd outlive your own reflection. Because when everyone's slowly flaking apart together, that's just high society. You consider a bath, but quickly think better of it. Bathing is widely believed to invite illness by opening your pores to evil vapors. Besides, drawing a bath requires servants, hot coals, and the mental preparation of a Navy SEAL. Soap? If you're lucky, it's lard mixed with ashes and the vague hope of cleanliness. Let's talk about personal hygiene at Versailles. In modern life, showers are for everything. Relaxation, existential dread, crying about your taxes. At court, they're for emergencies only. Taking a bath is like announcing to your household, "I'm feeling dangerously optimistic about not dying today." The prevailing theory is simple. Water doesn't clean you, it invites trouble. A nice soak is the fastest way to catch a chill and, according to every royal grandmother, perish in a matter of days. If you're feeling under the weather, the doctor's advice is never, "Take a bath and call me in the morning." It's more like, "Don't even look at water. Have you tried praying instead?" Now, suppose you ignore all warnings and attempt to cleanse yourself. First, you must summon at least 4 servants, one to haul buckets of cold water, another to fetch hot coals from the kitchen, a third to stir the bath so you don't get an unlucky cold patch, and a fourth to provide moral support or maybe fainting salts in case you overexert yourself. If you're important enough, there's a 5th person whose only job is to test the water with their elbow and make vague comments about the humours. The bath itself is no spa day. You're sitting in a wooden tub that leaks, drafts sneaking in around the window, the air thick with steam and the unmistakable whiff of boiled wool and apprehension. The water isn't replaced for each person. So if you share the tub with your siblings, parents, or visiting Austrian royalty, congratulations. You've invented the world's most exclusive soup. And after all this effort, what do you use to wash? A lump of soap that's part animal fat, part ashes, and part ancient superstition. It smells faintly of bacon, but not in the good way. Soap is so precious that most of it is reserved for laundry or, more accurately, for rubbing on stains and then giving up. For your body, maybe a little is dabbed on strategic zones. Most of the work is done with a rough cloth, a prayer, and a firm hope that nobody tries to sniff you at dinner. Exfoliation? That's just a byproduct of scrubbing yourself raw with a week-old towel and pretending the red patches are a sign of youthful vigor. If you're unlucky, word gets out that you bathed. Courtiers whisper. Did you catch a chill? Are you feeling unwell? You may be accused of vanity, recklessness, or worst of all, trying to hide something. Why else would anyone willingly submit themselves to a bath unless they had secrets to scrub away? Bathing is considered so unnatural that some doctors recommend the opposite. Rubbing yourself down with scented cloths or even fresh bread, the better to soak up impurities. Congratulations, you're now a walking charcuterie board. To mask the evidence, the court douses itself in perfume. Everyone carries a little scented pomander or sachet, stuffed into sleeves or pinned to waistbands. The goal is less to smell good, more to smell less like everything else. Odor neutralization means trading one bouquet of suffering for another. Your scent might be ambergris, rosewater, or just the prevailing winds of, at least it's not last week's fish day. Meanwhile, the palace keeps track of who bathes and how often, like a grim leaderboard. The king might bathe once a month, and that's considered excessive. The queen gets a little more leeway, public baths, sometimes observed by a crowd of dignitaries who arrive to watch, presumably in case she dissolves like sugar. Everyone else just waits for rain and hopes for the best. At the end of the day, avoiding baths isn't just a health precaution, it's an identity. The less you wash, the more you belong. Your place in society is measured by your ability to radiate confidence despite being marinated in your own history. Cleanliness is next to godliness, but in Versailles, it's about 3 carriages down, behind fashion, politics, and survival. So tonight, as you wipe your face with a damp cloth and call it spa night, remember, sometimes being a little dirty is the surest way to stay alive, make friends, and keep everyone guessing whether you really are hiding a scandal beneath the surface. Spritz, dab, splash, whatever it takes. French court life runs on perfume, gallons of the stuff, to mask every odor a crowded, unwashed palace can muster. Musk, ambergris, and floral notes swirl together until your eyes water and your nose goes numb. This isn't just luxury, it's chemical warfare. In Versailles, every breath is a gamble. With hundreds of nobles crammed together, sweating in layers of brocade and silk, and with bathing scheduled somewhere between almost never and not in this lifetime, you need a survival strategy. That strategy is perfume, and it's as essential as your powdered wig or your ceremonial sigh of boredom. You don't just put on perfume, you armor yourself in it. You coat your neck, wrists, handkerchief, inner hatband, undergarments, gloves, and occasionally your personal space. The daily perfume ritual starts before breakfast. A valet stands ready with cut glass bottles, some shaped like miniature obelisks, others like tiny poisoned apples. The ingredients inside would make a modern chemist faint. Crushed flowers, rare spices, resins, herbs, a dash of civet from the rear end of a wild cat, or, for the truly elite, a floating pearl of ambergris, a waxy lump coughed up by a sperm whale, and worth more than your average peasant's cottage. Everyone at court competes for the most complex scent, which often means the strongest, strangest, or most expensive. Smelling faintly of anything less than 17 ingredients is an admission of defeat, and perfume is not just about you. Your quarters are drenched in it. The royal apartments, already humid with the collective efforts of 1,000 people breathing, cooking, and generally existing, are periodically sprayed, sprinkled, or fumigated with a rotating cast of potpourris and scented candles. Curtains are soaked, floors are washed in rosewater, and even the furniture gets an occasional spritz. If you think your Airbnb hosts go overboard with plug-in air fresheners, try living in a palace where even the dog's bed smells like a funeral bouquet. For extra defense, you carry a pomander, a hollow ball filled with scented herbs and spices, on your belt or necklace. Always at the ready for a particularly aggressive waft of court air. When things get really dire, you press your handkerchief, soaked in violet or lavender, to your face and pretend you're overcome with emotion rather than on the brink of fainting. Social life becomes a game of olfactory dodgeball, weaving between perfume clouds and open windows. But not all scents are created equal. Court politics seeps into perfume as much as into conversation. The Queen favors orange blossom, so orange blossom becomes the rage. The King's mistress prefers jasmine, so suddenly everyone at court is drowning in it, even if they hate it. Want to insult someone? Wear a rival's signature scent to a ball. Want to signal a secret alliance? Exchange recipes for rosewater in a corridor. And if you can't afford the best ingredients, you simply use more of whatever you've got, if you have to smell like anything. Better to be accused of extravagance than poverty. All this effort isn't just about personal comfort, it's damage control. You're not covering up a little sweat, you're masking the fact that Versailles is, essentially, a giant gilded petri dish. Underneath every silk gown, beneath every powdered periwig, lurks a chorus of odors: musty feet, stale breath, 3-day-old pottage, a hint of last night's chamber pot. Perfume is the thin, fragrant wall between civilization and chaos. And sometimes, it goes wrong. Too much ambergris, and you smell like low tide at the fish market. Too much musk, and you might cause a diplomatic incident with the ambassador from Spain. Too little of anything, and someone will raise an eyebrow at dinner, delicately wave a scented fan, and begin a rumor about your hygiene. In the worst cases, conflicting perfumes mix into a volatile chemical fog that could peel paint. It's said that once, at a particularly crowded assembly, 2 dueling perfumes caused a cloud so powerful it knocked out a minor duchess and sent 3 courtiers stumbling into the garden for air. At the end of the day, perfume isn't just about allure or aesthetics, it's survival. It's a declaration: I am still standing, I am still fragrant, and I have not yet been conquered by the palace funk. So the next time you spritz yourself before leaving the house, be grateful you're just covering up last night's garlic, not the combined efforts of history's most aromatic royal family. And remember, at Versailles, to exist is to perfume, and to perfume is to keep the dream and the stink at bay. You rifle through your box of velvet patches, tiny stick-on beauty marks, each with its own social meaning. A patch by your mouth, you're flirtatious. By your eye, you're mysterious. By your chin, a political statement, obviously. It's communication via adhesive mole. Forget texting. Versailles does dermatology semaphore. Patches, known as mouches, are the emojis of the 18th century French court. They're little pieces of velvet, silk, or taffeta, cut into shapes that range from elegant dots to dramatic crescent moons, hearts, and even stars. Your first decision of the day isn't what to wear, but what secret message you want to send with your face. Will today be the day you broadcast coquette, scandal, or deeply bored but pretending otherwise? The tradition started as pure necessity. Lead-based makeup has a pesky tendency to flake off, leaving your complexion looking less marble statue and more crumbling fresco. Pockmarks and scars from smallpox are common. And for courtiers determined to maintain an illusion of perfection, A patch is a quick and fashionable fix. Over time, what began as cosmetic camouflage evolves into a complex language. Versailles loves nothing more than a code, especially if it can be gossiped about over an uncomfortable breakfast. Placing your patch is both an art and a calculated risk. Want to start a rumor? Place a heart-shaped patch just above your lip and see how fast the whispers spread. Trying to get out of a tedious conversation? Stick a star by your temple and let everyone know you're preoccupied with higher thoughts. The right patch can make or break a social encounter. If you're not careful, you could accidentally send the wrong message, like the time the Marquis put a patch on his nose to hide a pimple and inadvertently declared himself available for a secret rendezvous behind the hedges. Versailles is nothing if not enthusiastic about misinterpretation. Let's talk placement. By the right cheek, you're married. Left cheek, single and possibly looking. On the forehead, you're dignified, or at least want to be. Neck, passionate. Shoulder, adventurous. It's all part of a courtly game, one that's infinitely more fun than talking about taxes, gout, or the likelihood of the next bread riot. There's an entire industry built around patches. Vendors line the streets outside the palace, hawking velvet dots in a rainbow of colors and boxes shaped like tiny treasure chests. Some are simple, others are encrusted with tiny gems. Proof that you're not just rich, you're committed to winning at face Tetris. The patch box itself becomes a status symbol, decorated with gold leaf, mother of pearl, and perhaps a tiny secret compartment for love notes or the occasional illicit licorice. Of course, the best patches are hand-cut by your personal attendant, who spends hours at your dressing table perfecting the angle, trimming the edges, and trying not to sneeze, lest your patch land in your breakfast. The application process is delicate. First, a dab of beeswax or gum arabic, then a steady hand, and finally, the soft press of velvet against your lead-powdered skin. If it falls off mid-conversation, you must pretend nothing happened, even if it lands in someone else's wine glass. It's simply not done to acknowledge a loose patch. That's a faux pas on par with discussing personal hygiene. But underneath all this decorative fun, the patch is also a tiny act of rebellion. Sometimes, it's used to mock courtly rules, a subtle protest, a wink, a statement of "I see your etiquette," and "I raise you a star on my chin." A select few even use patches to express political loyalties, placing them on the left to signal revolutionary sympathies, or in secret arrangements to identify allies. If you're feeling really brave, you might combine 2 or 3 patches for a custom mood board. Intrigued, flirtatious, and a little bit defiant. By sunset, your patches might be a little askew, your face a map of the day's adventures. One patch gone missing during an overzealous fan wave, another still holding firm beside your eyebrow, letting everyone know you're a little mysterious and possibly just tired. The message might shift throughout the night, but one thing remains. At Versailles, your face isn't just your fortune, it's your personal billboard. So wear your patches wisely. After all, in a palace where everyone is speaking in code, sometimes a little velvet mole is the loudest thing in the room. You flash a smile. At court, that means flashing teeth rotted by a diet of candied fruit and no real brushing. If you're lucky, you rinse with wine or scrub with a cloth dipped in honey and ashes. Dentures, carved from ivory or someone else's teeth, which adds a whole new meaning to borrowed a smile. Let's talk about your mouth. The one thing no one at Versailles wants to talk about out loud. In a palace overflowing with sweets and scarcity of dental care, you're basically living in a golden age for cavities. Sugar, imported at tremendous expense and used to show off wealth, flows through the court in cakes, jams, candied violets, and enough bonbons to rot a horse's gums. The king likes his desserts as much as he likes power, so if you want to keep up with fashion, you'd better be ready to sacrifice your molars. Of course, there's no such thing as a toothbrush, at least not one that anyone uses consistently. Toothpaste, as you know, it doesn't exist. The closest thing is a rag dipped in whatever abrasive substance is lying around. Ashes, salt, wine, vinegar, and, if you're feeling decadent, honey mixed with ground-up seashells. The result? Teeth that are sometimes polished to a dull yellow or scrubbed raw until your gums bleed. The pain is constant. Toothaches are so common that it's considered polite to avoid smiling too widely, not because it's demure, but because you don't want to show off the missing members of your dental choir. And yet, everyone smiles. You have to. How else will the court see you're not secretly plotting something sinister behind closed lips? The trick is to perfect the tight-lipped, knowing smirk. If you're especially skilled, you can flash a single gold or ivory tooth, strategically placed to distract from the crumbling battleground of your real smile. And if things get truly desperate, it's time to upgrade to dentures. Now, dentures are a marvel of human optimism and questionable materials. Some are carved from ivory, others from animal bone, but the most luxurious are made from real human teeth, collected from unfortunate souls who didn't make it through last winter, or, if you have the right connections, from the mouths of prisoners or soldiers on the battlefield. These are called Waterloo teeth. And yes, you are smiling at the ambassador with a set of bicuspids that once belonged to a guy named Pierre from Marseille. If you're lucky, your dentist, really just the local barber with a terrifying array of pliers, soaks them in wine first. Let's not forget breath. Between the cavities, the abscesses, and the half-rotten food stuck in every nook, halitosis is practically a signature scent at court. To mask it, you chew on cloves, mint leaves, or candied aniseed if you can get it. Some swirl their mouths with rosewater or rinse with red wine. The only real solution is to outstink your neighbor. So whoever can afford the most perfume or the strongest spiced lozenge wins the day. Dental care emergencies? Oh, they happen. If you're suffering from a particularly nasty toothache, you might call for the royal barber surgeon, a man whose resume includes haircuts, extractions, and sometimes minor amputations. Anesthetic is a splash of brandy and a prayer. The extraction itself is loud, public, and unforgettable. Afterward, you're expected to return to court with a brave face and one fewer molar, like a badge of honor for enduring both sugar and suffering. If you do manage to keep your teeth into middle age, you're a walking miracle, and probably someone who's secretly abstained from most sweets and wine. Children start losing teeth early, and by the time you're 40, it's not unusual to be gumming your way through breakfast. The court, being the court, turns this into another competition. Whose teeth are real, whose are carved, whose are borrowed. Gossip about dentures swirls faster than the latest scandal, and woe betide anyone who's caught with a loose set mid-banquet. Rumor has it one duke's teeth fell out into his soup during a diplomatic dinner, and the ripple of stifled laughter could be heard all the way down the hall of mirrors. Still, in a palace that prizes appearance above all, the state of your mouth is just one more thing to manage, fake, or cover up. You perfect the art of smiling with your eyes, rely on strategic lighting, and keep a handkerchief handy for emergency repairs. At Versailles, dental disaster is part of the price you pay for living sweetly, and if you ever feel self-conscious about your next dentist visit, just remember, at least your smile is entirely your own. You lean in to whisper court gossip, careful to keep your distance. Bad breath is legendary, covered with clove-studded oranges or breath pastilles that taste faintly of soap and disappointment. Mint is a luxury, but let's be honest, no amount of herbs can really fix what's going on here. At Versailles, court life runs on secrets, rumors, and conspiratorial whispers. But those whispers arrive with a gale force of questionable aromas. The culprit? A perfect storm of lead makeup, sweet wine, ancient dental care, and the kind of diet that only a royal chef or an ambitious dentist could dream up. Everyone's mouth is a petri dish of candied fruits, roasted meats, and teeth that haven't seen a toothbrush since the last time France had a stable monarchy. It's not just you. Even the king's sweet breath has been the stuff of palace legend, and not in a good way. You might be tempted to reach for a sprig of mint before you circulate the latest scandal about the Dauphin's questionable hairstyle. But here's the catch. Real mint is rare and expensive. It's reserved for flavoring drinks, not for fighting halitosis. Instead, nobles improvise. They chew cloves until their mouths go numb, suck on violet candies that leave their tongues a delicate shade of purple, or pop-breath pastilles that promise freshness but deliver an aftertaste that could strip wallpaper. The most stylish nobles carry pomanders, decorative orbs filled with spices and herbs, ostensibly to ward off disease, but more often used as portable air fresheners. One gentle whiff is all it takes to remind yourself that, yes, things could always be worse. Oranges are a favorite accessory at court, not for eating, don't be ridiculous, but for sticking full of clove buds and carrying around like a personal air filter. These pomander oranges are the Renaissance version of breath mints, and as you clutch yours, you're sending a clear signal to the rest of the room. I'm about to say something scandalous, but at least it won't smell like I've just eaten a garlic farm. The only problem? After a while, the orange starts to rot, and now you're just waving around a decaying fruit ball with a side of disappointment. Of course, there's always wine. Red or white, it doesn't matter, as long as it's strong enough to numb your taste buds and kill whatever's lurking in your mouth. Some rinse their mouths with it. Others just drink enough to stop noticing the problem altogether. The more creative among you might even gargle with rosewater or vinegar, though the end result is less romantic garden and more last night's salad dressing. The true masters of courtly hygiene know the value of distraction. Why fix your breath when you can simply overpower it? Enter the era of scented handkerchiefs and gloves. As you lean in, you discreetly press a lavender-scented cloth to your face, as if overcome by emotion, while secretly creating a barrier between your breath and your audience. If someone faints mid-conversation, you can always blame the heat, the corset, or the general excitement of life at Versailles. No matter your efforts, there's an unspoken understanding that everyone is suffering together. Gossip spreads that the Comtesse de Noailles once knocked out a bishop with a single yawn, and that Louis XIV himself issued edicts about the proper use of clove buds before important meetings. Etiquette manuals circulate, offering dubious advice. Chew parsley, rinse with vinegar, avoid onions unless you're trying to end a conversation for good. But deep down, you know it's all for show. The only person with truly fresh breath is the marble statue in the courtyard. And even it's starting to look a little green around the edges. At the end of the day, Versailles is a palace of perfumes and pageantry, where every noble must play their part, including pretending that their breath is as fresh as the dewy gardens outside. So go ahead, pop another clove, press your handkerchief to your lips, and share that secret. Just remember to step back before the punchline. Because if there's one thing more enduring than courtly intrigue, it's the enduring power of royal breath. And in this world, even the whispers can clear a room. You worry about sweat. So you stuff little pouches of scented herbs in your sleeves, powder your armpits with crushed violet petals, or, if desperate, dab vinegar behind your ears. The result is a bouquet that's equal parts flower shop and medieval salad bar. Let's get straight to the heart of the matter. There are no roll-ons, no sprays, no aluminum-free sticks promising 24-hour protection. At Versailles, personal freshness is an uphill battle fought with creativity, denial, and whatever happens to smell stronger than you do after a day in layers of silk and velvet, you're not just dressing for the weather, you're dressing for the war on odor. The struggle starts in the morning, long before you make your first dramatic entrance. Your valet approaches with a small tray of options: lavender petals, rosemary sprigs, a handful of rose petals, or, for the truly daring, a crust of bread soaked in vinegar. No one at court believes in a universal solution. It's every noble for themselves in this olfactory arms race. Some experiment with dabbing cologne in hidden places, but you learn quickly that too much eau de toilette mixed with sweat turns your aura from delicate bouquet to herbal thunderstorm. One popular method: scented sachets. These tiny pouches are filled with dried herbs, flower petals, or even spices like cinnamon and clove. You slip one into your sleeve, another down your bodice, maybe one in each pocket for good measure. With every movement, you release a puff of perfumed air, provided you remembered to refresh the sachets and not just leave last week's wilting remnants to fester in your coat lining. For some, these pouches become a second skin. For others, a personal security blanket, something to clutch when the grand hall turns into a sauna of nervous energy and questionable personal choices. If you're of scientific mind, or just particularly desperate, you might try an armpit powder. Basically a mix of flour, violet petals and talc, patted on with a rabbit's foot or a feather. The theory is that you'll absorb the worst of the moisture and replace it with a subtle floral aroma. The reality? By noon, your underarms are both chalky and vaguely purple, with the added bonus that every hug you offer leaves a ghostly print on your companion's sleeve. It's called sharing, and in Versailles, it's practically a love language. Vinegar is another favorite. Supposedly, a quick dab behind the ears or across the wrists wards off not just bad smells but bad humors, whatever those are. You hope the sharp scent will keep the worst of the stench, and possibly a few gossipy courtiers, at bay. But there's always a risk. Too much vinegar, and you risk being mistaken for a salad. Too little, and you're just another noble marinating in the summer heat. Then there's the fashion solution. Court dress is designed to hide a multitude of sins, especially sweat. Billowing sleeves, padded bodices, lace cuffs, all provide plenty of hiding places for scented pouches, while also ensuring maximum insulation. It's like wearing a portable greenhouse. Every formal greeting is a carefully choreographed dance. A swift bow, a quick exchange of gloves, a wave of the fan, and, if you're unlucky, a whiff of what's truly going on beneath the velvet. Of course, all this effort is a response to a simple reality. Everyone is sweating, and everyone knows it. Versailles is a greenhouse of nerves, politics, candlelight, and body heat. Courtiers develop their own subtle ways to signal for fresh air: an exaggerated sigh, a longing glance at the open window, or a flurry of fanning when a particularly fragrant guest enters the room. The unlucky footmen, forced to stand still for hours in wool uniforms, give off their own earthy undertones, but no one comments. It's all part of the atmosphere. At the end of the day, personal hygiene is less about eliminating odor and more about managing it, masking, distracting, and pretending not to notice. When you finally peel off your many layers and collapse into bed, you're enveloped in the lingering ghosts of lavender, sweat, rosewater, and maybe a hint of vinegar. You drift off to sleep, comforted by the knowledge that, in the great game of armpit alchemy, you did your best. And at Versailles, that's all anyone can really hope for. It's time to visit the infamous throne. Versailles has a handful of commodes for hundreds of nobles, and chamber pots hide behind every curtain. Most people just pick a convenient corridor. Privacy? No. Decorum? Definitely not. The scent? Historical. Let's set the scene. You're at Versailles, surrounded by gilded ceilings, sparkling chandeliers, and a sense of splendor so overpowering that you almost forget you haven't used an actual bathroom in days. Almost, because when nature calls in this royal paradise, you have to be ready for an adventure. The palace is big on mirrors and marble, but tragically short on anything resembling a modern restroom. Instead, you have a choose-your-own misadventure with facilities that are both architectural and olfactory afterthoughts. First, there are the official toilets, known as chaises d'affaires, essentially wooden chairs with a hole cut in the seat, sometimes fitted with a porcelain bowl beneath. These are located in a few select rooms, and if you're lucky or important enough, you can reserve a turn. Most of the time, however, you're not that lucky. That's where the chamber pot comes in. Always kept conveniently under tables, tucked behind folding screens, or even hiding in a decorative alcove. Spot a footman discreetly emerging from behind the tapestry. Don't ask questions. He's probably just finished a delicate errand with the royal porcelain. The unwritten rule at Versailles: if you need to go, just pick a spot and hope for the best. Behind the stairs, behind a pillar, even in the famous Hall of Mirrors itself, there's a good chance someone's already claimed your favorite hiding place. Privacy is for peasants. Nobles prefer to commune with history. And history, as it turns out, is deeply aromatic. As you wander the palace, every corridor and corner is a potential minefield, a roulette of puddles and perfumes, the result of hundreds of people and very few proper solutions. Now, about those chamber pots. They're emptied by an army of servants known as night soilmen. Their job is equal parts heroic and tragic. Each day and night, these unsung champions make the rounds, collecting the fragrant evidence of royal life and carrying it out to the palace gardens, where, for the record, fertilizer takes on a whole new meaning. If you ever wondered why the flower beds bloom so brightly, now you know. They're nourished by the best and worst that France's elite have to offer. Decorum, as you might expect, is flexible. There's a famous story of courtiers conducting full political negotiations while seated side by side, each on their own commode. If you have to go, you go, conversation and all. Guests sometimes bring their own portable chamber pots, painted porcelain or silver, if you want to make a statement. Children and ladies in waiting are excused to powder their noses, which is courtly code for good luck finding a free pot. Even the king's official rising and bedtime rituals involve a carefully choreographed bathroom routine, sometimes performed in front of a respectful audience. Privacy is simply not part of the palace vocabulary. The scent, meanwhile, is legendary. It's a swirling combination of perfume, sweat, candle smoke, and something far less poetic. The Hall of Mirrors doesn't just reflect light, it traps odors too. Guests flutter scented handkerchiefs and pretend not to notice, but everyone knows what's going on. The staff do their best, scattering fresh rushes and herbs, opening windows, and emptying pots. But Versailles is a palace at war with itself. A battle between extravagance and basic bodily needs. If you're really desperate, you might step into the gardens. Rumor has it that even the hedges know too much. Courtiers have been caught relieving themselves in the bushes during long parties, which adds a whole new dimension to nature calls. No one bats an eye. Everyone's too busy looking regal and trying not to trip over a forgotten pot on the way back to the ballroom. So as you admire the grandeur and glitz of Versailles, remember this. Beneath all the gold leaf and crystal, there's a very human reality. Every royal has to answer the call. Sometimes behind a curtain, sometimes in front of an audience. Always with the knowledge that someone, somewhere, will have to deal with the aftermath. In the end, even the Sun King himself couldn't outshine the enduring power of a good chamber pot. You've heard rumors that queens bathe in milk for flawless skin. The reality: if you're Marie Antoinette, you might get a cold, sticky soak once a month. If the dairy budget allows. Everyone else is exfoliating with bread crusts and hoping nobody notices the rash. Let's break down this legendary beauty secret. Milk baths are the stuff of myth and PR. Marie Antoinette's rumored baths, so lavish, so creamy, sound glamorous in the retelling. But if you're picturing the queen lounging in a marble tub, serenely floating in perfectly warmed, sweet-smelling milk, you're only about halfway right. For one thing, milk doesn't come out of Versailles' gilded taps. It arrives in heavy, sloshing pails carried by grumpy servants who are already composing union petitions in their heads. By the time it reaches the Queen's bathroom, it's lukewarm at best and, more often than not, faintly sour. If you're really unlucky, you get the batch that was meant for the palace cats. And yet, it's all worth it. Because nothing says royalty like submerging yourself in the same stuff everyone else is putting on their porridge. The theory is that milk softens and brightens the skin, and there's some truth to it. Lactic acid is an exfoliant. Unfortunately, it's also a magnet for bacteria. After a nice soak, your skin is soft, but it's also a perfect home for the next big breakout. Marie Antoinette is said to cover herself in scented oils after each bath, hoping to smell less like cheese and more like a rose garden. But if you're not the queen, or even a minor duchess, don't count on the luxury of a full milk bath. You're working with what's left at the bottom of the jug. For the rest of Versailles, skincare is less about luxury and more about desperate improvisation. Forget imported creams and high-end serums. You might get a dab of cold cream if you have connections, but everyone else turns to the kitchen for their beauty needs. The exfoliant of choice? Yesterday's bread, crusts and all. You take a stale heel, rub it over your face, and hope the crumbs brush away a layer or two of grime and regret. If you're lucky, you don't scratch yourself raw, or leave a trail of breadcrumbs down your bodice, inviting every mouse in the palace to come say hello. Sometimes, a really ambitious noble might try a fruit or vegetable mask. Slices of cucumber for the eyes, if you're feeling extravagant, mashed apple if you're feeling revolutionary. But mostly, skincare means trying to remove yesterday's lead makeup, dabbing at new rashes, and covering up anything suspicious with powder and patches. You're not striving for dewy glow, you're aiming for not obviously inflamed. It's not just lack of product, it's the air, thick with smoke, sweat, and perfume, that does your skin no favors. Every day, you marinate in a haze of candle wax, animal fat, and whatever the chef's been burning in the kitchens. Even if you could wash properly, the water's so hard and full of minerals that it leaves your skin drier than last year's gossip. If you're especially unlucky, you pick up a nice crop of eczema made worse by tight collars and layers of wool. Most nobles develop a collection of fashionable rashes and blemishes. Some go full trendsetter and coordinate their outfit with their irritation. Scarlet velvet with matching redness. Pale blue with an elegant touch of flakiness. Of course, no one talks about their skin woes out loud. Everyone's pretending to be flawless. But in the privacy of the dressing room, you see the truth. Elbows red and raw from bread crust exfoliation, cheeks streaked with failed experiments, backs spotted with mystery bumps. When the pain gets too much, you might appeal to the local apothecary for a soothing ointment. The results? A mixture of lard, rosewater, and whatever herbs are lying around, which sometimes helps and sometimes just attracts more flies. By nightfall, your skin feels both pampered and abused, delicately perfumed and still a bit sticky. But when you step out into the candlelight, powdered, patched, and perfectly composed, you remember, at Versailles, beauty isn't about feeling good, it's about convincing everyone else that you do. And if anyone asks about the rash, just smile and say, it's the latest Parisian trend. Who are they to argue? You're never alone at Versailles. There's always something crawling, hopping, or biting. Under those gorgeous clothes, lice and fleas throw a nightly banquet. Scratching in public? Entirely normal. If you're lucky, someone invented a decorative scratcher shaped like a swan. It's easy to look at the paintings and imagine that court life is all elegance and refinement. But peel back a single layer of silk and you'll discover the real court society. a teeming metropolis of insects, all living their best lives at your expense. In fact, the true engine of Versailles isn't political intrigue or forbidden romance. It's a relentless parade of biting, crawling, and relentless itching. Let's start with lice. Everybody's got them. Nobles, courtiers, even the king. If you've got hair, you've got house guests. Wigs don't help. They just make the commute easier. Picture this. It's a hot summer evening. You're wearing 3 layers of brocade. Your wig is stuffed with horsehair and flour, and you've been standing for hours in a packed salon. You feel a tickle at your scalp, then another behind your ear, and, before you know it, you're doing the Versailles shuffle. One hand delicately patting your head, the other adjusting your cravat as you try to relieve the world's most refined itch. No one blinks. If you're creative, you accessorize with a gratte boulogne, a little stick or elegant scratcher, possibly shaped like a swan, or if you're extra lucky, a golden cherub. It's perfectly acceptable to absent-mindedly scratch during a royal concert, as long as you look like you're simply contemplating the beauty of the violin solo. Next up, fleas. They're everywhere. The palace dogs and cats roam freely, shedding a trail of parasites as they go. The rush mats meant to absorb spills and add rustic charm? They're basically luxury flea condos. You sit down for a meal and within minutes, you feel a nip at your ankle or the gentle tickle of something making its way up your stocking. The only thing worse than being bitten is accidentally scratching through your silk breeches and revealing a red, swollen souvenir. Don't worry, everyone else is distracted by their own miniature plagues. It gets worse at night. Your grand feather bed looks inviting, but it's a haven for bedbugs, fleas, and whatever else was left behind by the previous guest. Possibly an ambassador, possibly a family of squirrels. You nestle into your sheets, and the real party begins. The late-night itch, a thon. You toss and turn, raking your shins with your toenails, hoping that the rustling sounds are just the wind and not a bug parade. Morning arrives, and you emerge with new welts, a fresh crop of bites, and the resigned knowledge that tonight will be exactly the same. Royal remedies for the itch are more creative than effective. Some nobles dust their bodies with scented powders or sprinkle their bed linens with dried lavender and pennyroyal in hopes of driving the bugs away. Others commission herbal amulets, little sachets worn around the neck, which do wonders for morale and nothing at all for actual lice. When all else fails, you submit to the latest miracle tonic from the local apothecary, who swears that his vinegar and garlic rub will solve everything. It doesn't, but you do get the bonus of smelling like a well-seasoned salad. Of course, this is Versailles, so even scratching is an art form. There are rules. Never scratch above the neck in public. Always use your left hand at dinner. And if caught, claim you're testing the embroidery on your new waistcoat. If someone raises an eyebrow, you raise 2 as if to say, "I'm above discomfort," and hope you don't start twitching during the king's latest speech. In the end, no one escapes the itch. It's the great leveler, the one thing everyone shares, from the scullery maid to the queen herself. If you're lucky, you'll only be haunted by the memory of scratching in silk. If you're really lucky, you'll invent a new style of decorative scratcher and start the next big fashion trend. Until then, keep your hands busy, your herbs handy, and remember, at Versailles, comfort is fleeting, but the itch is eternal. You see that noble across the hall with the especially elaborate wig? That's not just a fashion statement. It's covering half his head, lost to a mysterious illness. Powder hides scars, but the smell is a dead giveaway. Syphilis, the real trendsetter. In Versailles, fashion is often a matter of life and death. Sometimes literally. Take a closer look at those enormous, gravity-defying wigs bobbing above the crowd. They aren't just about showing off wealth or competing in the who can make their head look the most like a wedding cake contest. They're a form of medieval camouflage, designed to hide the ravages of one of the era's most notorious plagues, syphilis. Syphilis isn't a polite dinner topic, but its fingerprints are everywhere at court. This French disease, which, in a deliciously ironic twist, the French called the Neapolitan disease and the English called the French pox, sweeps through high society with the enthusiasm of a gossipy duchess. One of the earliest symptoms? Hair loss, patchy, dramatic, and impossible to miss. Suddenly, that clever page boy haircut or powdered ponytail just won't cut it. Enter the age of the periwig, the only thing standing between you and a lifetime of awkward glances at court. Wigs quickly become the great equalizer. Whether your scalp is pristine or a patchwork of scars and sores, no one will ever know. That is, unless you're unlucky enough to lose your wig in the middle of a bow, revealing your secret to a room full of delighted frenemies. But the art of disguise doesn't stop at hair. Court wig makers create increasingly elaborate designs, cascading curls, powdered bouffants, and even entire ships mounted atop the head, to draw the eye away from any signs of illness lurking beneath the surface. But while a good wig can hide almost anything, there's one thing it can't quite mask: the smell. Syphilis, especially in its advanced stages, comes with an aroma all its own. A mix of rotting flesh, medicinal ointments, and whatever you've sprinkled on top in a desperate attempt to out-perfume disaster. The result? A scent that can clear a corridor faster than royal guards on payday. Powder helps, but only so much. If you catch a whiff of something sour and floral, it's best to politely compliment your neighbor's cologne and move upwind. Of course, it's not just hair loss that gives the game away. Syphilis leaves scars, cratered cheeks, and collapsed noses, so wigs are often paired with thick, white lead makeup and plenty of beauty patches. If you're very fashionable, you might even turn your patchwork into a look, adding a velvet heart over your worst scar or a daring star on your temple. It's less I'm unwell and more I'm setting trends, and at Versailles, there's no shame in faking it until you make it. Or at least until you make it to the next masquerade ball. Treatment options are, in a word, terrifying. The go-to cure is mercury, applied as an ointment, taken as a pill. Or, if your doctor is feeling especially experimental, administered as a steam bath. The side effects include drooling, tooth loss, and excessive salivation. Basically, you become a medical fountain for the entertainment of your friends. The court is full of hopeful souls whose attempts at self-care have left them even more bedraggled than before, bravely hiding their misery beneath mountains of curls and clouds of powder. Behind closed doors, nobles compare remedies, trade the names of discreet wig makers, and quietly swap stories about the latest miracle cure. Some even travel incognito to Paris or London, hoping to find a new physician who won't ask too many questions about their sudden need for a half-dozen matching wigs and an extra crate of rosewater. In public, though, everyone keeps up appearances. That's the Versailles way. Deny, disguise, distract, and never let them see you sweat, or itch, or limp, or accidentally glue your wig to the candelabra. So the next time you spot a particularly outlandish coiffure, don't judge. That towering masterpiece isn't just a fashion statement, it's a survival strategy, a badge of resilience, and a silent plea for the world to mind its own business. In the end, Versailles is less about perfection and more about managing imperfection with as much style, wit, and scented powder as humanly possible. Syphilis may be the real trendsetter, but here, it never stands alone. Eyebrows are so last century. You pluck, bleach, and, if you're especially stylish, replace them with little strips of mouse fur glued above your eyes. The result? A face that looks surprised at all times, probably because it's as uncomfortable as it sounds. In the grand halls of Versailles, where every detail of your appearance is scrutinized more closely than a secret treaty, Eyebrows are considered optional, at best. Thick, natural brows are out. Instead, the goal is a forehead, as broad and blank as a newly painted wall. Why? Because in a world obsessed with status, every fashion is about showing you have the time, servants, and expendable rodents to do things the hard way. Also, the paler and larger your brow, the more aristocratic your lineage must be. If you look like you're perpetually startled by your own reflection, you're doing it right. The ritual begins with plucking, ruthlessly. No stray hair is left behind. Tweezers, sharp threads, or even the edge of a knife are all fair game. If you're especially committed, you bleach what's left with a mixture of vinegar and lemon juice. Then coat your brow bone in white powder until your entire forehead blends into your hairline. Congratulations. You now look a little bit like a boiled egg, and your mother is finally proud. But why stop there? If you're a real trendsetter, you don't just erase your brows, you replace them. Enter the mouse fur eyebrow. Yes, real mouse fur, snipped from the tiniest, most unfortunate creatures in the palace kitchens. Mouse fur is prized for its delicate texture and soft color, which supposedly looks more natural than your actual hair. The fur is cut into little strips, glued into an arch above your eyes, with the help of a sticky mixture made from fish bladders or tree sap, and patted into place by your personal maid, whose loyalty you hope outweighs her disgust. The effect is striking. From a distance, you look permanently surprised, like you've just learned what's really in the palace stew. Up close, it's clear you're wearing tiny rodent wigs on your face. But no one at court is brave enough to comment. If you're unlucky, your new brows come unglued during a particularly steamy ballroom dance or slip sideways during a fit of laughter, leaving you with one brow in Paris and the other in the provinces. The solution? Maintain your composure, keep your forehead still, and hope the lighting stays forgiving. Mouse fur isn't the only substitute in play. If your household is out of mice, the palace cats have been busy. You might improvise with feathers, thread, or the fine hairs from a horse's tail. One creative marquise once used spun silk, only to discover that the result shimmered distractingly under candlelight, making her the accidental inventor of the glow in the dark eyebrow. Fashion at Versailles is less about practicality and more about who can keep a straight face while their latest experiment disintegrates. For those who want a longer-lasting solution, there's always tattooing, though not in the way you might think. Some brave souls have their maids prick their skin and rub in a mixture of soot and oil, hoping for the perfect arch. Most end up with a pair of faint smudges that look suspiciously like last night's mascara. But in a palace where everyone's faking it, you can usually pass off any disaster as the latest Parisian style. Eyebrow trends are so important that they're discussed in the same breath as royal decrees. A duchess's decision to go full mouse can spark a wave of copycats, while a particularly disastrous slip, say a brow landing in the soup, becomes the talk of the week. Your eyebrows are social capital, gossip fodder, and a mark of your willingness to suffer for beauty. At the end of the day, your forehead is smooth, your brows are perched somewhere above your eyes, and you're ready to face another evening of candlelit judgment. If you feel the urge to move your face, resist. If you hear a faint squeaking sound when you raise an eyebrow, just smile and say it's the sound of fashion marching forward. Because in Versailles, you're not just raising eyebrows, you're reinventing them, one rodent at a time. Your nails, long and stained with red pomade, show you're above manual labor, scrubbing them clean, unthinkable. Underneath, a fascinating ecosystem of grime develops. A silent but deadly status symbol. In Versailles, hands are for holding fans, fluttering handkerchiefs, and issuing silent, devastating judgments, not for doing anything so uncouth as work. Your nails are little banners of privilege, unfurling to announce, I don't churn butter, I don't till fields. The closest I've come to a shovel is pointing at one from a safe distance, short, clean nails, peasant chic. The longer, redder, and more unwashed your fingernails, the higher your place in the food chain. Let's start with color. Rouge isn't just for lips and cheeks, it's for your cuticles too. You dip your fingertips in bright red pomade or stain them with crushed berries, madder root, or even the dregs of your evening wine. The result is a set of nails that look perpetually blood-tipped, dramatic and dangerous. It's a little bit I am descended from Julius Caesar. A little bit I just strangled someone in the garden. Either way, it's a conversation starter, and possibly a warning. The ritual of nail care begins in the morning, at your dressing table, surrounded by bottles of scented oil, tiny scissors, and enough emery boards to sand down a palace door. Your valet files your nails to a graceful point, trims hangnails, never too much, just enough to show off that you pay someone else to notice them, and applies oil to keep the cuticles soft and gleaming. The finishing touch is a dab of rouge, pressed into each nail bed with the devotion of a priest anointing relics. If you're especially fashionable, you might sprinkle a little gold dust or crushed pearl on top, just to keep the competition nervous. But cleanliness, that's where Versailles draws the line. Underneath the glamorous veneer, your nails tell a second story. One of yesterday's sweets, last week's garden party, and this morning's breakfast. Food, powder, and the general detritus of royal life collect in spectacular little crescents. Scrubbing this away would defeat the point. In fact, visible grime is a sign that your hands are too important to get wet. If anyone points it out, just smile serenely and declare it the mark of leisure. There are, of course, hazards. You must be careful not to break a nail. Doing so risks both your dignity and a sharp reprimand from the head valet. In courtly circles, a broken nail can be spun into a tale of woe, a day-ruining catastrophe that warrants at least one extra chocolate and a full afternoon of complaint. Rumor has it the Dauphine once wept over a chipped pinky and was consoled by an emergency shipment of marzipan. If you absolutely must clean your nails, say for a royal portrait or an exceptionally nosy ambassador, there are subtle tricks. Dip your fingers in scented water, swirl them briefly in a silver bowl, and then hide the rest with a fresh smear of rouge. Some courtiers keep tiny brushes, more for show than for use, displayed alongside jeweled nail buffers and miniature knives meant for slicing fruit or, in desperate cases, for scraping off the more ambitious clumps of whatever that was. And don't forget the role of fashion in all this. Nails are status, but they're also style. One season its sharp points, the next its rounded ovals. Queen Marie Antoinette herself is said to have started the almond nail trend after declaring her own hands too delicate for angles. Her courtiers naturally followed suit, until the court poet, ever a rebel, appeared with squared-off thumbs and threw the palace into a tizzy. At the end of the day, your hands are your resume. The more extravagant, lacquered, and idly filthy, the more you prove you belong. When you wave your fan or hold a glass of wine, you're signaling centuries of inherited leisure. And if a stray crumb of cake or a speck of garden dirt clings to your royal manicure, let it stay. After all, in Versailles, even your dirt has pedigree. Wide, watery eyes are all the rage. You dab in a little belladonna, literally deadly nightshade, to dilate your pupils. The world looks soft and romantic, at least until the blurred vision and possible hallucinations kick in. At Versailles, there's nothing so prized as an air of innocence, even if it's chemically engineered. The ideal is to look perpetually on the verge of tears, like you're about to faint from beauty, scandal, or the heartbreak of discovering someone else wore your favorite wig. Enter belladonna, the aristocrat's secret weapon, a few drops of which will give you pupils so large they could practically swallow a small dog. A quick glance across the ballroom, and you're the very picture of luminous mystery, never mind the mild toxicity humming through your veins. The ritual is equal parts glamour and danger. Your maid approaches, eyedropper in hand, ready to transform your dull, ordinary gaze into a portrait-worthy masterpiece. The first drop stings, the second makes your vision swim. The candlelight blurs, transforming the world into a gauzy romantic haze. Every courtier seems more attractive, every rival more distant, every forbidden flirtation somehow more possible. You blink, trying to focus on the king's latest proclamation. But all you see is a shimmering cloud where his wig should be. Of course, belladonna is not just for the women of Versailles. The men, eager to keep up in the beauty arms race, dab it in too, though they might claim it's just to clear up eye fatigue from too much candlelit reading. The reality? No one wants to be the only one at court with pupils that look merely human. If you see a marquis squinting suspiciously at his plate or walking into a doorframe, rest assured, he's simply keeping up with the latest trend. But all beauty has its price. After a few hours, the side effects start to creep in. You might experience blurred vision, a pounding headache, or a sense that the world is gently spinning on its axis. Some unlucky souls get full-blown hallucinations. Once, during a particularly stuffy reception, the Duchess of Chartres spent an hour engaged in animated conversation with a ficus. Others find their eyelids droop, or their hearts race with a kind of anxious energy that pairs poorly with 17 layers of brocade and the constant fear of fainting. It's a small price to pay, they say, for eyes as deep and dark as midnight. The risks are well known, but largely ignored. After all, you're surrounded by hazards: lead in your makeup, mercury in your ointments, and now nightshade in your eyes. Every beauty regimen at Versailles is a high-stakes gamble. To not participate is to risk obscurity, a fate worse than death for anyone hoping to marry well, rise at court, or simply survive another year of relentless comparison. Meanwhile, courtiers develop tricks to hide the more obvious side effects. Fans are fluttered to disguise watery eyes, and everyone pretends not to notice when you mistake the grand staircase for a hallway. Etiquette manuals advise that if you start to swoon, simply lean gracefully against a marble pillar and let a servant fetch the smelling salts. Blaming the heat is always acceptable, and, if you must, you can always claim you're overcome by the sheer majesty of the Sun King's new velvet waistcoat. By the end of the evening, your eyes might be dry as dust and your vision wobbly, but your social standing is secure. You're luminous, unreadable, and as delicately tragic as a heroine in a romantic novel, assuming you can make it back to your chambers without tripping over a footstool. When you finally close your eyes, you wonder how much of what you saw tonight was real, and how much was just the latest trend, seen through a glass, darkly and ever so fashionably blurred. At Versailles, beauty isn't safe, and it certainly isn't easy. But as you drift off, nightshade still working its magic, you know you've done what you must. Because when it comes to envy at court, the only thing sharper than the gossip is the look in your dangerously dilated eyes. You wriggle into your corset, laced tight enough to compress your soul. Breathing is optional. Fainting in public? It's the latest party trick. Blame the corset, not the fact that nobody's eaten a vegetable in a week. Corsets are the secret architecture of Versailles, more important than any foundation stone, more influential than any edict from the king. Before breakfast, before gossip, before your first powdered wig, there's the ritual of the squeeze. You stand tall, well, as tall as you can while someone's knee is in your back, gripping the bedpost as your maid tugs the laces tighter and tighter and tighter still. Every breath becomes a negotiation. Is it possible to inhale, exhale, and look mysterious at the same time? At Versailles, the answer is always, not for long. Fashion is war, and the corset is your armor. It pulls your waist into a waspish silhouette, lifts your bosom toward the heavens, and guarantees your back is as straight as a fencing foil. Nobles compete for the tiniest waist, measuring themselves against each other with a tape and a heavy dose of envy. If you can fit both hands around your midsection, congratulations, you're ready to lord it over the competition, even if you might pass out at any moment. But for every inch lost, something else is sacrificed. Usually comfort, occasionally consciousness. Fainting at court is less an accident and more a sport. The most elegant way to swoon, a graceful slide to the floor, catching yourself on a handy chaise lounge, and summoning a crowd of concerned onlookers. If you manage to time it between courses at dinner, you get double points, and possibly a second helping of candied chestnuts when you come to. The ladies in waiting keep smelling salts ready and fans fluttering, pretending it's the heat, the excitement, or the overwhelming beauty of the Hall of Mirrors, not the fact that no one has filled their lungs since last Tuesday. Then there's the issue of digestion. With your insides squeezed tighter than a jar of preserved peaches, even the smallest meal feels risky. Those multi-course feasts? A minefield. No one wants to be the noble who hiccups, burps, or heaven forbid, breaks wind in front of the Dauphin. But with all that pressure, sometimes the body rebels. When it does, everyone pretends not to notice. Instead, conversation gets a little louder, fans flutter a little faster, and the musicians in the corner play something sprightly and distracting. If you're caught in the act, you simply blame the cabbage, the stress, or, if all else fails, your rival's perfume. Corsets are an equal opportunity torment. Men, too, have their own versions, sometimes called stays, worn beneath embroidered waistcoats. The goal is the same, a perfect posture, an air of effortless superiority, and a waistline you could balance a teacup on. Male courtiers may not faint as often, but they're just as likely to grumble about restricted movement as they bend awkwardly to greet a passing marquise. As the day drags on, you develop coping strategies. Shallow breathing, practiced sighs, a perfectly timed collapse into a settee. Some nobles stuff their corsets with lavender or scented pomanders to mask the faint whiff of stress sweat that comes with being trussed up like a festive ham. Others invest in looser undress corsets for private hours, but only the truly rebellious ever loosen their laces in public. That's the kind of scandal that can end a season or launch a new fashion. By evening, you're exhausted. Every muscle aches, your waist is ringed with red marks, and you swear you'll never eat another cream puff again, until tomorrow, of course. You peel off your corset with the same relief most people reserve for removing a shoe full of pebbles. Your ribs sigh, your stomach groans, and your maid gives you a sympathetic pat. She's seen it all before. But as you step back into the candlelight, posture perfect and waist impossibly tiny, you know you've conquered the ultimate test of courtly endurance. At Versailles, beauty hurts. Sometimes it even gurgles. But at least you're suffering in style. And if you do happen to faint, remember, it's not you, it's the fashion. Sliding into silk stockings is a privilege, one that comes with swampy feet and a pervading cheese aroma. The trick is to pretend you don't notice, and if someone does, just accuse them of being a Jacobin. There's nothing that signals your social status in Versailles quite like a pristine pair of silk stockings. Forget about being comfortable. This is about showing off wealth, fashion, and your ability to own clothing that would be instantly destroyed by a muddy road or a single day's honest work. Silk stockings are so delicate that even putting them on is an event. You start by powdering your legs with starch or talc, not just to slide the stockings up more easily, but to protect that expensive silk from the horror of human skin. Of course, no one mentions what happens after you've spent all day strutting across marble floors and pacing the gardens. Silk, for all its beauty, is basically a greenhouse for your feet. There's no moisture wicking, no breathability, and no way to escape the slow boil that begins the moment your foot slides in. After an hour or two, your toes are swimming. After 4, the only thing keeping you from openly weeping is the knowledge that everyone else is suffering too. Shoes don't help. In fact, the elegant slippers and pointed court shoes favored by French nobility are tailor-made for trapping heat and maximizing discomfort. Leather linings soak up the sweat, hold it tight, and create the perfect environment for odors to bloom. Odors that combine with the already musty perfume of ancient floor rushes and 1,000 other feet. In summer, the grand salons smell suspiciously like a cheese shop during a heat wave. Courtiers try to hide the truth with scented shoe pomanders, little sachets filled with dried lavender, cloves, and occasionally desperate prayers. Foot care, such as it is, revolves around disguising the problem rather than solving it. At the end of the day, you peel off your stockings and, if you're prudent, hang them over a chair near an open window. Servants might attempt to air them out or sprinkle them with rosewater, but the underlying aroma lingers, a reminder of every dance, every forced march from the king's apartments to the gardens, every anxious hour spent waiting for someone to finally leave so you can have your turn at the single functioning commode. And yet, no one at Versailles dares complain. Admitting your feet smell is almost as bad as admitting you can't afford a fresh pair of stockings every week. Instead, you bluff. If a rival suggests a whiff of camembert, you simply laugh and point out that only a revolutionary would dare insult a noble's hosiery. If all else fails, you pull your feet under your chair, wave your fan a little faster, and change the subject to politics, fashion, or preferably someone else's body odor. Of course, there's a secret society of stocking sufferers at court. Whispered conversations revolve around the best powders, the newest imported silks, and which footmen are the most discreet about disposing of socks past their prime. Some nobles go so far as to keep a spare pair hidden in their dressing rooms, swapping them out during dinner for a quick burst of artificial freshness. It doesn't last, but it keeps up appearances. Even the king isn't immune. Louis himself is rumored to change stockings multiple times a day, and woe to the valet who brings the wrong color or the wrong scent. A misplaced pair can be grounds for demotion, or at least a good, long sulk. Meanwhile, the lesser courtiers do their best to keep up, often patching holes with scraps of old silk and praying that nobody looks too closely at their ankles. At the end of the evening, as the ballroom empties and you finally collapse onto your bed, you're grateful for the privacy to scratch, scrub, and air out your feet. But tomorrow, the ritual begins anew. Powder, slide, stride, and sweat. Because at Versailles, suffering is status. And nothing proves your place quite like silk stockings, a forced smile, and a subtle, stinky shuffle down the marble hall. Your linen shift is changed only occasionally and laundered by an army of servants. Silk and velvet? Never washed. Just brushed. The result? Clothes that look immaculate from a distance and like a crime scene up close. Laundry at Versailles is less about actual cleanliness and more about the delicate art of not getting caught stinking. The logic is simple. Changing clothes is hard, washing them is harder. And dealing with the aftermath of 18th century French detergent is a risk no noble wants to take. Your finest garments, embroidered velvet, shimmering silk, that waistcoat that cost more than your valet's annual salary, can't touch water. It would ruin the fabric, fade the dyes, and possibly trigger a fainting spell among the royal tailors. So, you improvise. Your linen undergarments, the only items allowed to be washed regularly, take the brunt of daily wear. Think of your linen shirt or shift as a sacrificial sponge, bravely absorbing all the sweat, powder, perfume, and stress of court life. So your outer garments don't have to. These get sent off to the palace laundry, where dozens of women haul water, build fires, and scrub with blocks of lye soap so caustic it could probably remove your reputation as well as last night's wine stain. The washhouse itself is a scene of controlled chaos, filled with steam, shouting, and the scent of boiling linen, a perfume you don't find at any Parisian apothecary. Even so, don't expect your linen to return in pristine condition. It will be cleaner, sure, but it will also be stiff as a board, slightly singed around the edges, and occasionally marked with mysterious grey streaks that no one discusses. It doesn't matter. The important thing is that it smells like fresh air and lye rather than anything distinctly human. You slip it on with a sigh of relief, knowing the next time you'll see it, it'll be another week of hard living older. As for your beautiful silks and velvets, water is the enemy. Instead of washing, your valet or maid attacks stains with a stiff brush, sometimes dusted with fine sand or chalk. Stubborn spots are covered with fresh powder, perfume, or, in emergencies, a well-placed brooch. Embroidery is gently picked clean with tweezers, and any lingering smells are smothered with more rosewater than the gardens see in a year. The result is an outward illusion of perfection. Your suit or gown gleams in the candlelight, every pleat pressed and every fold in place. Step closer, though, and the truth reveals itself. Fraying seams, faint rings of sweat, and the unmistakable patina of history and ambition. And then there's what never gets cleaned. Shoes are wiped, never scrubbed. Cloaks are shaken out, rarely beaten. Gloves, especially the scented ones, are worn until they develop their own unique character and then quietly disappear, never to be spoken of again. At court, parting with your favorite pair of gloves is more traumatic than losing a title. Of course, this laundry avoidance is a secret everyone shares, but nobody mentions. The staff, sworn to silence by threat of unemployment or a public scolding, know exactly which nobles are the worst offenders. The most ambitious maids will keep a few tricks up their sleeves. A dab of lavender oil, a quick repair stitch, an extra hour in the sun. You reward them with coins, compliments, and a prayer that the next ball isn't too warm. All of this means your public persona is perfectly curated from a safe distance. From across the ballroom, you're a vision, immaculate, elegant, practically glowing. Up close, you're a survivor, hidden beneath layers of artful deception, sweat, and the kind of bravery only the unwashed truly understand. So, as you sweep through Versailles in your brushed, perfumed finery, just remember, every courtier you pass is fighting the same battle against odor and entropy. At court, cleanliness isn't next to godliness, it's next to impossible. And somehow, that just makes your perfectly powdered cuffs and gleaming velvet cloak even more impressive. As night falls, brave workers trudge through the palace, emptying chamber pots and mopping up unspeakable messes. They're the silent backbone of Versailles. Everyone pretends not to notice them until someone's wig falls in a puddle, while the world outside imagines Versailles as a golden paradise of luxury and light. Every noble knows that behind the perfumed curtains, reality is maintained by a small army of unsung heroes, the night soil men. These are the men who perform the work no one else will, navigating the labyrinthine palace corridors armed with nothing but buckets, strong backs, and a resignation to fate. Their nightly journey takes them from grand ballrooms to dank servant stairwells, where the only thing heavier than the smell is the silence of 1,000 nobles pretending it's all someone else's problem. The night soil men don't have fancy uniforms. Their tools are simple: wooden yokes, sloshing pails, and battered mops that have seen things best left unspoken. Their route is a minefield of chamber pots tucked beneath brocade chairs, behind tapestries, and inexplicably at the end of the king's own billiards table. Some pots are decorative porcelain, others plain clay, but all are full to the brim with the evidence of royal life. The night soil men's task is to empty them discreetly, scrub away the worst, and make everything as presentable as possible by sunrise. It's the kind of job that can only be done with a strong nose and an even stronger sense of humor. They work in shadows, navigating the palace by moonlight and memory. If you catch a glimpse of them, it's usually just a flash of brown apron or a pair of mud-caked boots vanishing behind a door. Nobles, of course, never make eye contact. There's an unspoken understanding that the less you acknowledge the night soil men, the more you can maintain the illusion that Versailles is somehow above such earthly realities. But ignore them at your peril. When things go wrong, when a pot overflows, when a corridor becomes an impromptu slip and slide, or when, heaven forbid, someone's priceless wig tumbles into the mess, the night soil men are suddenly everyone's favorite scapegoat. Gossip whirls through the halls. Who let the chamber pot linger too long? Whose job was it to mop the corridor before the Spanish ambassador arrived? Who left that suspicious puddle under the Hall of Mirrors grand staircase? The answer is always the same. Blame the night soil men. Of course, there are perks of a sort. The night soil men hear everything. As they make their rounds, nobles whisper secrets, lovers sneak midnight meetings, and rivals scheme in what they think is privacy. The night soil men are invisible, but they miss nothing. Some say they have enough stories to bring down half the court. Others claim that's why they're paid so little. It keeps them too busy for blackmail. Despite the endless indignities, there's a strange pride among these workers. They know the palace would collapse, literally and socially, without their efforts. While the nobles dance, dine, and debate fashion, the night soil men are the ones who keep the wheels turning and the stench just faint enough to ignore. In a world obsessed with appearances, their work is the invisible glue holding everything together. By sunrise, their job is done. The palace sparkles once more. The air is merely thick with perfume instead of disaster, and the nobles wake to another day of pretending everything is effortless. Only the night soil men and the laundry maids know the truth. Versailles may glitter, but it's built on a foundation of tireless, thankless labor. So the next time you marvel at the elegance of the Sun King's court, spare a thought for the men in the shadows. Because while everyone wants to be remembered for their powdered wig or scandalous romance, it's the night soil men who make sure the palace can survive another day, one bucket at a time. You slip on a pair of gloves soaked in orange flower water, hoping to disguise the fact that your hands haven't been washed since last Tuesday. Gloves are both a status symbol and a last line of defense against your own bodily aromas. At Versailles, where every handshake is a social chess move and every gesture is scrutinized by the sharpest eyes in France, gloves are more than an accessory, they are an absolute necessity. For nobles, gloves are armor, a polite shield between your own dubious hygiene and everyone else's. They're the only thing standing between your carefully cultivated air of refinement and the reality that you haven't properly washed your hands since you can't remember when. But these aren't just any gloves. The true elite slip on pairs of fine kidskin or lace, steeped in aromatic concoctions worthy of an alchemist's lab. Orange blossom, rosewater, clove, lavender, or, for the especially adventurous, a dab of ambergris or violet oil. The result is a soft cloud of perfume with every movement, a fragrant distraction from whatever lingering traces of yesterday's breakfast might still be clinging to your fingernails. Wearing gloves in the palace is a ritual. Before leaving your chambers, you draw them on with slow, deliberate care, letting the scent rise and blend with your many other layers of perfume. The more heavily scented, the better. After all, the air is thick with the competition of rival aromas, and you don't want to be outdone by the marquis with the jasmine fingers or the duchess who smells faintly of Christmas pudding. Gloves are as much about one-upmanship as they are about personal hygiene. Of course, gloves serve practical purposes too. They keep your hands soft and pale, proof that you haven't been outside mucking about in the garden. Pale hands mean privilege. Calluses, dirt, and sunburn, that's for the working classes. If a servant catches sight of a single spot on your palm, you can expect a full day of snickering in the laundry rooms. So, you keep your gloves on for every public appearance, even at dinner, even while playing cards, and especially while greeting guests. The only time it's acceptable to remove them is for certain courtly rituals or if you're about to faint. Gloves fluttering dramatically to the floor, of course. Then there's the less glamorous reality. Gloves trap whatever is already on your hands. In summer, the combination of sweat, powder, and perfume can turn your gloves into a microclimate best not investigated. By the end of the day, they are more museum exhibit than accessory, stained with rouge, soaked with scent, and lined with enough grime to support their own ecosystem. Washing them is out of the question. That would ruin the delicate material. Instead, they are aired out, stuffed with herbs, and, if you're feeling extravagant, replaced entirely. The most stylish at court even have gloves custom embroidered with tiny family crests or laced with colored ribbons. Gloves become silent status symbols. Who has the most delicate embroidery, the finest lace, the freshest scent? Some courtiers commission scented gloves as gifts or tokens of affection. A romantic gesture that says, "I care for you, but please, for the love of Versailles, don't touch me with your actual hands." When scandal erupts at court, as it inevitably does, gloves are often unwitting accessories. Lost gloves are found in the wrong bedroom, exchanged as tokens of secret meetings, or left behind in the garden after an evening stroll. There are even whispered rumors of courtiers disguising illicit rendezvous by switching gloves, leaving their rival's perfume behind as an alibi. If you find a pair that isn't yours, you don't ask questions, you just quietly add it to the growing pile in your dressing room and pretend you're collecting them as souvenirs. In the end, scented gloves are Versailles in miniature. Luxurious, deceptive, and deeply committed to keeping up appearances no matter the cost. Underneath the layers of fragrance, silk, and self-assurance, everyone's hands are just as human as yours, maybe even a little worse. But as long as you can slip on a fresh pair and waft a hint of orange flower with every gesture, you'll always have the upper hand. In the perfumed chess game of royal society, that's what counts. Bedtime is its own adventure. Feather mattresses are rare. Most sleep on straw or lumpy sacks. Sheets are rarely changed. Bedbugs? Absolutely. You drift off hoping nothing crawls into your powdered hair. At Versailles, the day's suffering doesn't end when the candles go out. It just changes shape. The ritual of beauty sleep is, like everything at court, a masterpiece of denial and wishful thinking. Your chambers may be lined with velvet and gilded with gold, but underneath the elegance lurks a world of nocturnal misery. The fantasy of sinking into a pristine, cloud-soft bed is just that. A fantasy. Unless you're the king or queen, your mattress is more likely stuffed with straw, old horsehair, or anything softish that could be rounded up by a disgruntled servant and shoved into a ticking. Lying down, you immediately notice the bed's unique aroma, a blend of sweat, stale perfume, and whatever the last 5 people to use it left behind. Bedding at Versailles isn't washed, it's aired, meaning it's hung out of a window once a month to flutter above the palace gardens, collecting a new assortment of pollen and pigeon feathers. The sheets are rarely changed, unless you have truly scandalous connections in the laundry room. The result? A sleeping arrangement that is equal parts status symbol and science experiment. But wait, there's more. The main residents of your bed aren't people, but insects. Bed bugs thrive in the palace's warm, crowded chambers, feasting on the nobility night after night. They hide in seams, corners, and especially in the elaborate trim of the bed curtains. At bedtime, you can sometimes see them making their nightly commute across the damask landscape of your pillow, marching with a determination that is both impressive and horrifying. You try not to think about it as you slide your powdered, perfumed head onto the pillow. But the itch starts almost immediately. Everyone has their tricks. Some dust the bed with lavender or wormwood. Others simply tie a silk scarf over their hair and pray for the best. If you're unlucky, You'll also share your slumber with fleas brought in by the family dog, or even the occasional mouse, who appreciates a warm palace bed as much as you do. The scratching, twitching, and swatting become part of your nighttime routine. A well-to-do courtier might commission a bed curtain in the hopes of keeping the worst at bay, but insects are persistent, and Versailles is nothing if not a land of determined survivors, both human and otherwise. And as for beauty sleep, you wake up with creases from your straw mattress, tangles in your powdered hair, and sometimes the outline of last night's bedbug bites to complement your fashionable rash. But you slap on a fresh layer of lead makeup, adjust your wig, and face another day of pretending you spent the night in blissful comfort. If anyone asks about your puffy eyes or your new constellation of bumps, you just smile mysteriously and say you stayed up reading philosophy. Or, better yet, hint at a torrid midnight rendezvous. Those feather mattresses you hear about are strictly reserved for the highest of the high. For everyone else, you make do with what you have. Some clever courtiers bribe the staff to fluff the straw or sneak in a little extra padding. But even then, the results are temporary. By week's end, your mattress is flat, lumpy, and suspiciously heavy. If you're especially unlucky, it's also damp from a mysterious source that no one wants to investigate. Still, you count your blessings. At least you're not sleeping on the stone floor or, worse, sharing your mattress with the entire household, as many servants do. And as dawn breaks, the court begins to stir, itchy, exhausted, and ready to start the cycle all over again. Because at Versailles, the real beauty isn't in your sleep. It's in your ability to rise above the itch, the bites, and the shared, unspoken horror of the midnight crawl. So tonight, as you nestle into your historical haystack, remember, the road to royal radiance runs straight through the kingdom of dust mites and drowsy denial. Dream sweetly, just not too deeply. You wouldn't want to miss the feeling of something tiny marching across your toes. Tonight's menu includes sugar, wine, more sugar, and perhaps a garnish of candied violets. Supposedly, these treats brighten the complexion. Realistically, they just make your teeth fall out faster. At Versailles, beauty isn't skin deep, it's dinner deep. Every meal is a chance to sculpt your public image, even if that means sacrificing your molars and your dignity in the process. While peasants gnaw on turnips and the rest of Europe debates the merits of bread crusts, French nobles dine with the single-minded goal of looking fabulous, or at least fabulously wealthy. It all begins with sugar, the star of the show. Imported at eye-watering expense, sugar is less a food and more a status symbol. Sprinkled, stirred, and baked into every course. Breakfast, sweet pastries. Lunch, wine with candied orange peel. Dinner, dishes so sugar-laden they sparkle in candlelight. Dessert is a riot of marzipan, sugared almonds, and cakes frosted with more sugar than sense. Even vegetables aren't safe. Peas, carrots, and chestnuts are often glazed with syrup, turning what could have been a healthy snack into dental warfare. This love affair with sweetness isn't just about showing off. There's a persistent belief at court that sugar and candy give the skin a youthful glow. Portrait artists obligingly paint cheeks plumper and rosier, claiming it's all thanks to the virtues of sugared fruit. The reality is that sugar's real virtue is making everyone's teeth crumble like old limestone. But hey, you can always close your lips in your next painting. Wine is another essential weapon in the beauty arsenal. Nobles drink wine at every meal, convinced that it freshens breath, cleanses the palate, and keeps the blood circulating. Forget water. Water is for peasants and people who enjoy dysentery. At Versailles, the rule is, if it isn't sweet, or at least 13% alcohol, why even bother? The results are sometimes catastrophic, especially when paired with the aforementioned sugar orgy. Gums bleed, tongues stain, And by the time you're 40, your mouth looks like a battlefield. But the real danger is never discussed. If anyone starts to wobble or mumble at dinner, the only concern is that their wig is straight, not their sobriety. Let's not forget the little extras. Candied violets are all the rage. Delicate and purple, they're said to sweeten the breath and bring a gentle flush to the cheeks. In reality, they stick to your teeth and turn your tongue blue, but at least they're pretty in the bowl. Spiced comfits and pastilles are handed out between courses, both as palate cleansers and a desperate attempt to mask the garlic, onion, and general breath crimes lurking behind every fan. Occasionally, health makes a cameo. The court's herbalists hawk beauty foods, thin broths spiked with herbs, mysterious potions brewed from rose petals, and endless cups of cleansing teas. But these are usually ignored in favor of whatever is trending among the fashionable. Chocolate if the queen approves. Sweet lemonade if a duchess claims it makes her skin shine. Science hasn't caught up to the hype, but Versailles is all about the illusion. If someone important believes it, it must be true. And then there's the real reason for all this consumption: competition. Every banquet is a runway show. Nobles compare plates, whisper about who got the last glazed chestnut, and invent increasingly outlandish foods to secure attention. If the king raves about candied violets, the next day, the entire court is purple-mouthed. If the Dauphine insists honey brings out her inner radiance, honey sales triple overnight, and everyone spends the week sticky. By midnight, the meal is over. Your stomach is spinning, your teeth ache, and your tongue is dyed, some unfortunate pastel. But you look around at the candlelit crowd, cheeks artificially rosy, eyes bright with sugar and wine, and realize you're exactly where you're supposed to be. In Versailles, looking good is a full-time job, and dinner is just one more way to fake perfection. So next time you see a portrait of a glowing, smooth-skinned royal, just remember, behind that airbrushed glow is a mouthful of regret, a liver on overtime, and a lifetime of sugary ambition. Eat pretty, but don't expect to keep your teeth. That's what portraits and pursed lips are for. Smooth skin is in, but shaving is a risky business. Razors are dull, soap is scarce, and aftershave is a splash of rosewater, if you're lucky. Cuts and rashes are just part of the royal glow. At Versailles, a smooth face or silky leg is the finishing touch on your already dangerous beauty routine. It's the final illusion of perfection. The exclamation mark after hours spent painting, patching, and perfuming yourself into something vaguely human and hopefully unforgettable. But unlike everything else at court, you can't delegate this bit. Shaving is a do-it-yourself nightmare, unless you're wealthy enough to have your own personal barber, a man with steady hands, questionable training, and a toolkit that would make a medieval dentist jealous. Let's start with the tools. Razors in the 18th century aren't the delicate precision instruments you see in modern adverts. They're chunky steel blades that get duller with every pass and require regular sharpening on a leather strop. Even the best razors drag and bite, and heaven help you if someone else borrowed yours to shave their dog last week. There's no disposable option, just a permanent gamble with nicks, scrapes, and the occasional spontaneous bloodletting. Soap is technically available, but it's not the creamy, moisturizing kind. The standard issue is a block of something lumpy, brown, and about as fragrant as an old shoe. If you can afford it, maybe you get a whiff of olive oil or a bit of goat's milk. But most days you're lathering up with whatever was left over from the laundry. Lather is sparse, so you make do by wetting your skin, gritting your teeth, and hoping for the best. Nobles in a rush sometimes skip soap altogether, dry shaving their way to both prestige and disaster. The actual process is, in a word, perilous. First comes the gentle tugging as you try to remove a week's worth of stubble. Then comes the sudden burn as the blade meets resistance and decides to skip, gouge, or skid at the worst possible angle. If you're lucky, you'll get away with a minor scrape. If not, Your jaw or shin will look like you lost a knife fight with a distracted chef. You press a bit of linen to the cut and assure yourself that a little color adds to your regal charm. Courtier legend claims that some nobles deliberately left a nick or two, believing the sight of freshly shaven wounds showed off both bravery and the latest fashion in pain tolerance. After the ordeal, it's time for aftercare. Forget soothing balms or cooling gels. Those belong to a future century. Here, the go-to solution is rose water, or, for the less fortunate, plain brandy. Both sting with righteous fury. Nobles wince and weep in silence. Then powder over any redness with liberal handfuls of starch or flour, completing the look with a pat of lead-based makeup for maximum suffering in style. And what if you can't face another round with the razor? That's what beards and mustaches are for. Fashionable, practical, and depending on the court's current trend, either the height of masculinity or a sign you've given up. Facial hair is shaped, curled, and sometimes powdered to match your wig. Some courtiers grow chin tufts or elaborate sideburns as both a rebellion against the tyranny of the razor and a convenient way to hide last week's rash. Women have it no easier. Unshaven legs or arms are concealed beneath layers of silk, but society whispers that the truly elegant should be smooth all over. Some ladies try their luck with razors, while others resort to tweezers, wax, or the ultimate in desperation, singeing away stray hairs with a candle. The result? Smoothness in theory, blisters in practice, and a new respect for the power of patience. In the end, every cut, rash, or patch of stubble is a badge of survival. At Versailles, the only thing more dangerous than a close shave is admitting that you skipped it. So tomorrow morning, you pick up your battered blade, take a deep breath, and hope the next royal glow comes with fewer bandages. You're feeling off, so you reach for a beauty elixir, maybe mercury for your complexion, or a vinegar rinse for your scalp. These cures are more likely to cure you of life altogether, but at least you'll look fabulous in your portrait. Versailles may be the capital of luxury and style, but beneath the gold leaf and powder, it's also a place where desperation meets creativity in the form of health and beauty remedies that would make a modern pharmacist run for the hills. The pharmacy at court is a collection of hopeful bottles and jars, each promising miracles and each more hazardous than the last. Let's start with mercury. If your skin is looking a little dull or riddled with the inevitable poxmarks, your apothecary will confidently prescribe a cream containing mercury, a favorite among the ambitious and the afflicted. The logic goes something like this. If lead makeup makes you pale, then mercury ointment will make you radiant. What it actually does is slowly poison you from the outside in, burning away blemishes along with, your health. Apply enough of this elixir, and you'll soon be the proud owner of red, inflamed skin, trembling hands, and a slightly haunted look in your eyes. The worst part? You can always add another layer of lead to cover up the mercury's side effects. Problem solved. Vinegar, on the other hand, is the universal answer to everything else. Dull hair? Vinegar rinse? Oily skin? Vinegar compress? Persistent bad vibes? Try a vinegar bath. There's nothing vinegar can't do, according to court wisdom. In reality, it might disinfect a small cut, but for most purposes, it just makes you smell like a living salad. Still, nobles persist. They dab their scalps with vinegar to stimulate growth, soak handkerchiefs in it for dabbing at imaginary fevers, and splash it on bites, rashes, and sometimes just for the bracing sting that proves you're doing something. If it burns, it must be working. Herbal infusions and oils are next in line. Saffron for brightness, rosemary for vigor, and lavender for sleep, if you can afford it. Some of these do little harm, and a few, lavender especially, actually help you relax in a palace where relaxation is in short supply. Most, though, are ground up with a dash of something else, maybe a little camphor, maybe a hint of arsenic, just for luck. If it smells strong, stains your skin, or makes you dizzy, it's probably a crowd favorite. Animal products make a strong showing too. Bear fat is popular for thick, glossy hair, and snail slime is said to soothe burns and blemishes. One noblewoman claims goose grease cured her son's persistent rash, though everyone else suspects he simply moved to the other end of the palace. Frog spawn poultices, pigeon droppings, and even the occasional earthworm tea round out the menu. The best remedies are those that are hard to obtain, difficult to prepare, and impossible to repeat with any success. If all else fails, the court turns to hope and superstition. Charms are tied to bedposts, prayers are whispered over tonics, and astrological advice is followed with religious devotion. The line between medicine and magic is thin, and nobody at Versailles is above trying a new tincture if it promises to fix what the last 12 potions made worse. Of course, none of these remedies are secret for long. If you stumble into the morning assembly with bright red cheeks, everyone knows you overdid the mercury again. If your hair smells sharp, they guess it's vinegar. If you seem especially lively, they'll demand the name of your herbalist and try to bribe your maid for the recipe. Still, for every disastrous result, there are those fleeting moments when the concoctions actually seem to work, or at least, when the candlelight and the right wig make everything look magical. The illusion is all that matters. At Versailles, beauty is pain, fashion is survival, and the only guaranteed cure is to keep trying the next dangerous thing, in the hope that someday you'll look as good as your portrait. Even if you can't remember your own name by then, by midnight, you're marinating in layers of sweat, rosewater, powder, and at least 3 different animal-based perfumes. It's an olfactory arms race, and the only loser is anyone with a functional sense of smell. At Versailles, smelling good is not just a personal goal, it's a full-contact sport. The day begins innocently enough with a delicate dab of floral water behind each ear, perhaps a hint of jasmine or violet on your cuffs. But as the hours pass and the palace heats up, so does the competition. Everyone's trying to out-fragrance each other. And the only thing heavier than the political intrigue is the scent cloud clinging to every noble within a 50-foot radius. Layer 1. Sweat. Let's not pretend. With hundreds of bodies pressed together in heavy clothes, nervously flitting from chamber to corridor, everyone is working up a royal sheen. Deodorant is more myth than method, so you do what every sensible noble does: cover the evidence. A generous dusting of powder goes under wigs, down the neckline, and even under the arms, where it forms small, chalky drifts. Is it effective? Only if your definition of effective includes leaving pale fingerprints on every surface you touch. Layer 2. Rosewater. This is the Versailles standby. Servants splash it everywhere. In the air, on the bed linens, inside shoes, and, in a moment of desperation, straight onto your face. Its scent floats atop the baseline of sweat, forming a fragrant barrier that lasts until about lunchtime, when the realities of palace life start to reassert themselves. By afternoon, you're on your 3rd handkerchief, each one more aggressively perfumed than the last, held to your face whenever the winds shift unfavorably. Layer 3. Animal-based perfumes. Now we're getting creative. The elite swear by scents made from musk, sourced from the glands of a deer, civet, scraped from a small wild cat's posterior, and ambergris, the infamous whale bath prized by perfumers for its luxurious, lingering note. Each animal essence is painstakingly distilled, bottled, and then poured over everyone at court with reckless abandon. The result is an aroma that's less walk in the royal garden and more zoo at feeding time, with a side of potpourri. The air itself becomes a battleground. In the salons, clouds of competing perfumes clash in mid-air, forming invisible borders between rival factions, rosewater versus musk, orange blossom versus civet, and the always controversial experimental scents imported from distant lands. Guests enter and are instantly enveloped in a haze of aromatic bravado. If you're smart, you claim a spot near an open window or hope for a breeze. If you're unlucky, you're trapped between the Comtesse de la Clove and the Marquis de Musc, and the only way out is through. Every object you touch retains a trace of your presence. Gloves reek of lavender, fans waft sandalwood, chairs absorb years of overlapping perfumes until even the palace mice smell like an apothecary. The smell clings to your skin, hair, and somehow your very soul. At night, when you collapse into your scented sheets, the aroma follows you into your dreams. It's a perfume bubble so dense, so layered, that you could probably bottle your sheets and sell them as eau de survived Versailles. Of course, not everyone suffers equally. The palace staff, who actually clean the rooms and air out the bedchambers, develop a sixth sense for dangerous blends. There are whispered stories about servants fainting from a particularly strong batch of ambergris or pets running away from owners who overdid it on the civet. A few savvy footmen even carry their own handkerchiefs, dampened with mint or lemon, just to clear their heads after a day in the scent trenches. In the end, the royal aroma is as much a symbol of status as the clothes you wear or the company you keep. It's a declaration. I have the means and the daring to drown myself in the finest and weirdest scents money can buy. But it's also a unifying experience. Every courtier leaves Versailles a little dazed, a little more fragrant, and a little less sure their nose will ever work properly again. So if you ever time travel to the Sun King's court, don't forget to pack a nose plug. And if you think you're immune to bad smells, just wait until midnight, when the true aroma of royalty comes out to play, and the only way to survive is to embrace the bubble, breathe deep, and hope the next breath is mostly rosewater. You reach for your paintbrush, not to create art, but to draw delicate blue veins across your forehead and décolletage. Everyone at court is doing it. Why? Because being pale and veiny proves you never toil in the sun and therefore must be aristocracy. The result? Your chest looks like a road map for lost beetles. Just don't sweat, or the lines will run and you'll look like a startled Smurf. At Versailles, fashion is about showing off what you don't do. You don't work outdoors, you don't get dirty, and above all, you don't tan. A ghostly complexion is the ultimate status symbol, proof that you're above manual labor, and, ideally, above all earthly concerns, except which scandal to whisper about at supper. But for many, mere paleness isn't enough. The real connoisseurs of courtly beauty add a network of faint blue lines to their skin, each one carefully brushed on to mimic the visible veins of the truly elite. The look whispers, "My blood is as blue as my conversation is sparkling." The ritual starts at your dressing table, somewhere between your final coat of lead makeup and your first dab of perfume. You pick up a tiny brush and a pot of blue pigment, usually a blend of indigo and chalk, though some favor powdered lapis if they really want to shine. Your maid assists, steadying your head while she maps out your most aristocratic veins. Across the temples, down the throat, curling delicately over the top of your chest. Some go for realism, tracing the actual veins beneath their skin. Others freestyle, creating elegant loops and patterns until they resemble an antique map of the Seine. The symbolism is unmistakable. At Versailles, blue blood isn't just a figure of speech, it's a brand. The more visible your veins, the higher your rank is presumed to be. A peasant's skin, tanned and tough from honest work, would never reveal such delicate artistry. Only the idle rich can afford to look this fragile, and to spend their mornings perfecting an illusion that could dissolve in a heartbeat if someone opens a window. Of course, there are hazards. The palace is hot, crowded and tense, especially during a long day of court intrigue. If you start to perspire, your delicate veins can become rivers, running down your neck and merging into blue puddles at your collarbone. There's nothing quite as humiliating as leaving behind a streak of pigment on your friend's shoulder, or looking in the mirror after an evening of dancing to discover you resemble a poorly erased blackboard. Quick fixes include blotting with a handkerchief, reapplying powder, or, in truly desperate moments, blaming your artistic temperament. Fashion-forward nobles have turned this strange habit into an arms race. The most ambitious paint ever more elaborate vein networks, sometimes adding tiny hearts, stars, or initials into the mix. A duke once caused a scandal by painting the outline of his family estate into his veins, hoping to impress a certain marquise with his dedication and his real estate portfolio. Copycats quickly followed, and before long, Versailles was home to foreheads that looked like blueprints for grand chateaux. Not everyone approves. Some old guard courtiers grumble that the vein craze is a youthful affectation, destined to fade like last season's eyebrow mouse fur. Others claim it's just another way for the ambitious to fake what can't be bought, old blood. But at Versailles, innovation always wins, and the painted vein is here to stay. At least until someone invents a way to tattoo blue lines permanently. Give it a century. By the end of the night, your blue veins may have faded, smeared, or migrated, but for a few glorious hours, you walked the halls looking like living porcelain. Proof of your noble birth and your mastery of the most ridiculous trends history has ever seen. So next time you see a portrait of a French royal with veins so blue they'd confuse a nurse, remember, it's not just vanity, it's social strategy. And if you ever need a roadmap out of an awkward conversation, just follow the blue lines. They'll always lead you back to the top of the court. By mid-afternoon, your lead-based makeup is flaking off, your perfume is fading, and that suspicious itch is now a full-on crawl. Do you bathe? Of course not. Instead, you add more powder, another layer of scented pomade, and a confident smile. Being clean is less important than looking clean. And dignity is all about keeping a straight face while something wriggles under your bodice. At Versailles, bathing is viewed with deep suspicion and a touch of horror. The no bath club isn't a clique, it's the status quo. If you want to fit in among the aristocracy, your primary enemies aren't lice or dirt, but the very idea of hot water meeting bare skin. Water is for gardens, fountains, and wine dilution. Human contact with it? Only as a last resort, or for the truly reckless. Hygiene is all about artful deception. Your vanity table is stocked with mountains of powder, white for your face, pink for your cheeks, grey for your wig, and a mysterious blue for veining, if you're feeling daring. By the time you've dusted yourself down, the room is foggy enough for a game of blind man's bluff. Servants dart around you, replenishing your arsenal, scented pomades for your hair, sachets of crushed herbs for your sleeves, and a bottle of rosewater for a quick spritz. The effect is magical from a distance, a walking confection, almost edible in appearance. Up close, the spell starts to crack, quite literally. As the hours crawl by, your armor of powder and perfume is assaulted by sweat, stress, and the occasional pastry accident. You learn to master the subtle arts of patching and reapplication. A dab of powder here, a pinch of rouge there, a strategic swipe of scented oil on anything that might be suspicious. If a bit of lead-based beauty paste peels away, you just slap another layer on top. Your motto: never let them see you sweat or your natural skin tone. The worst part is the itching. Under your brocade layers, colonies of lice are staging the social event of the season. And every so often you feel a tiny foot race along your ribs. You can't scratch, not in public, so you shift, adjust, and offer a brittle smile, all while hoping nobody notices your discomfort. For the truly desperate, there's the scratching stick. an elegantly carved tool you keep hidden in your reticule or sleeve, designed to reach those impossible spots without drawing attention. Everyone at court has one, and the best are works of art in themselves. Silver, ivory, mother of pearl, sometimes even shaped like tiny cherubs or serpents. It's Versailles' answer to a back scratcher and a status symbol in one. Cleanliness, as far as anyone is concerned, is a social performance. You change your linen shift and chemise every so often, sending them off to be boiled into submission by the palace laundry. Outer layers, velvet, silk, and embroidery, never see water. Instead, they're brushed, spot-powdered, and perfumed within an inch of their fibers. The result is clothing that looks untouched by mortal hands, but smells faintly of lavender, last week's wine, and whatever the dog tracked in. Occasionally, a foreign visitor arrives, freshly bathed and smelling faintly of soap. The court is scandalized, whispers fly. Is she ill? Does he have something to hide? Why would anyone subject themselves to such a dangerous foreign custom? Meanwhile, the No Bath Club doubles down, publicly reapplying powder and assuring each other that real cleanliness comes from a well-oiled, well-powdered exterior and an iron will to ignore the reality underneath. By evening, you are a master of reinvention. Another dusting, another spritz, and you're ready for the next round of intrigue, never mind the itchy underworld you're hosting beneath your stays. As you glide into another candlelit hall, chin high and smile unbroken, you know you've achieved the highest art of Versailles, the illusion of effortless beauty, dignity intact, and not a drop of bath water wasted. Because here, to be seen suffering is a faux pas, but to look immaculate while enduring the silent crawl of history's worst beauty secrets, that's nobility. That's the Versailles way. So, as the palace lights dim and Versailles settles into another night of perfumed dreams and muffled scratching, take a deep breath, preferably not through your nose. You've made it through a full royal day and somehow managed not to pass out from either the fumes or the lead poisoning. Not bad for someone who woke up surrounded by 100 nobles and only slightly fewer chamber pots. Tonight, as you slip beneath your crisp sheets that have been laundered sometime in this decade, on a mattress free of straw, bugs, and lingering cheese aromas, maybe take a quiet moment to thank your ancestors. They survived a world where beauty meant blue veins painted on your neck, lead paste on your face, and a perfume cloud so dense you could practically cut it with a knife. They endured itchy wigs, bad teeth, and skincare routines straight out of a horror novel. They braved public scratching, communal bathrooms, and the constant, relentless battle against lice. Because history, as absurd and revolting as it can be, is really a story of endurance. It's proof that people will do whatever it takes to fit in, look important, or just survive the weirdness of their own time. Even if it means gluing mouse fur to your eyebrows or rinsing your mouth with wine and crossed fingers. So tonight, as you cozy up in your fresh pajamas, surrounded by modern miracles, hot water, toothpaste, maybe a fan humming softly, remember how far we've come. The comforts we take for granted are the wildest dreams of every powdered, perfumed, and very itchy royal who came before us. Sleep well, knowing you'll never have to paint on a beauty mark, fake a fainting spell, or fight a small army of lice just to get through the day. May your dreams be sweet, your sheets be clean, and your air entirely free of ambergris. Good night, and may you wake up tomorrow grateful for your toothbrush.